Welcome, I'm Bruce Morey, Senior Technical Editor of Manufacturing Engineering Magazine, and this is another SME Media webinar. Our topic today is how to become 75% faster at your APQP and PPAP processes. Are you struggling to efficiently create, manage, support, and monitor APQP and PPAP requirements and documentation? This webinar will discuss, This webinar will discuss a new solution that may change the way you work. Here to present this to you today is Tim Hogan, VP of Business Development for IQA. Before I turn things over to Tim, I'd like to outline how the webinar will proceed and a couple of housekeeping items. On the right side of the screen, you'll find a question and answer box. If at any time during the presentation you'd like to ask a question, please type it in this box and send it along. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Should we run out of time, the questions will be sent to our speakers and you'll receive an answer by email. Should you experience any difficulty during the webinar, such as a blank screen or a lack of sound, please use the Q&A box to alert us, and we will respond individually in writing with a suggested fix. That brings us to the final housekeeping item. Should you experience a difficulty such as this, the presentation will be available in recorded form at about 4 p.m. Eastern today. You may then watch the recorded version of this webinar at a time and place when you have more bandwidth. You may also watch the webinar as many times as details you might have missed or for any other reason. All you must do is sign in again using the credentials you used to join us now. You may even share those credentials with colleagues who might benefit from learning more about this topic. Now, let me turn the microphone over to Tim. Tim?
Hi, thank you very much, Bruce. I appreciate that. If I will share my screen here and you'll get rolling. You could let me know when you see the screen, Bruce?
You bet.
All right.
Okay, Tim, we're all set.
Okay, outstanding. Well, thank you very much again, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Now, your time is very valuable, and we are not about to waste it. So let's jump right into the message and get to automating your submission requirements packages. So we're going to present a slightly different format today. Typically, you'll see us run through a PowerPoint presentation explaining the process and how we can help fix the bottlenecks. However, today we're going to take a step back and just introduce the concept of what we'll be addressing. And then we're going to spend the vast majority of the time with a live presentation of the software itself and our PQP application. Now, we hope you don't mind the change, but we thought you might like to see the product in action and how it can actually streamline your process. Okay, but is 75% really a realistic number? Or is it just, a fancy number to gain attention? As a company, we typically state that you can save at least 50% of your time. However, our customers do tend to tell a different story. It's not uncommon for our customers to see a 75% time savings from their existing process. Okay, so we all know we get acronymed to death in this industry. However, it's important to note that although there are different forms of terminology across industries, many of the requirements are the same. For example, a Pfmea is a Pfmea, whether it's part of a device master record or an AS9100 package. Now, whether you're in medical, aerospace, automotive, construction, or even defense, most have adopted some form of quality system to address some, if not all, of the original 18 elements of APQP. But why do our customers need help with it? Well, taking a step back just for a minute, most people go into business to help other people, right? To make life better for themselves and to maybe turn a profit for their investors. Now, they typically do this by growing their business. And if something limits that growth, it also limits the amount of impact they can have on others. What we hear frequently that shop owners or plant managers tell us, it goes something like this. Look, I can add machines. I can add production. I can even add capacity, expand the building. I can even buy robots to load the machines, so I don't need as many people in the shop floor. Where I'm struggling is finding people and resources to complete all the documentation needed for PPAP submissions. And quite honestly, they're stuck in a quandary. If they add more people to do the paperwork, this typically adds to the overhead costs and makes the piece price go up to where they may or may not even be awarded the job. But if they don't add people, they run the risk of not shipping on time and therefore potentially losing business or future business because of the missed shipments. But why has so much focus and emphasis been placed on streamlining the manufacturing process and making parts better and faster with more robotics and automation and process control, while very little has been applied to the quality documentation side? And even when it has, it's more of a document control system, quality document control system. So what if we could automate the documentation portion of the PPAP submission? And that's where we come in with HiQA's PQP application. Now, pardon the play on the acronym, but PQP stands for Production Quality Planning. So no matter the industry or the sector, if you're producing a part, you need to prove that the parts you make and the process you made them in meet certain criteria, and you need to document it. So from a 2D print all the way through manufacturing and submission, we can help control your process digitally. That's right. This is not a file management system. This is a database-driven solution that provides complete transparency of the part record. And it increases the collaboration between departments, especially manufacturing and quality. Now, I promise to be short and not kill you with a PowerPoint. So I hope I did just that. So let's delve into the software and show you the PQP application. Okay, thank you for your patience on that. Would like to roll into the, again, the application. This is the Inspection Manager software, part of the HiQA offering. And we are simply going to go in from a new drawing and show you part of that process. So we're not going to delve right into the PQP side of it because we need to lay some foundational work ahead of time. So part of that foundation, what we find when we kind of draw the information back to the origin state, is simply when a project or part comes into a supplier, what do they typically get? They're typically handed the print. This is after the RFQ process. They're typically handed the print along with a purchase order and a quantity and says, here, make this, and obviously some requirements along with that. So the foundational start is actually the purchase order and the print, maybe the CAD model with embedded Pmea information. But we need to redigitize this in order to get it into the database and into the system. So the first step is to auto balloon this. So with one click on our auto balloon, and there are different options here for pages and for surface finish, and to we can not do basic or reference dimensions, whatever you'd like. But typically we just hit OK and let the OCR take over to do its process. So this is a proprietary OCR that we developed. This is not a purchased item. We designed it to specifically look for dimensions, look for GD&T, and extract that information off the print. And then populate it in the database. So as you can see here, that took about just under 30 seconds. But we have the print completely ballooned right now. All the data has been extracted. But again, most importantly, it's been extracted into the database and put into what we call the bill of characteristics. So this bill of characteristics has all the information for the print. And again, it's already been extracted. Here's the requirement right here. Here are the tolerances and the nominal information, even the multipliers if they're pertinent. They are identified and put into the system. So all of this is captured in the database now within that first 30 seconds that we started the process. So there's more information here for us to get, right? So we do have the flexibility to be able to extract this information. And if we go over to the part properties, we have this product here called, or function here, I should say, called extract title block tags. And we can simply grab and drag a box around this and then identify what it is. Now, once we do that, the information is automatically transferred over and the part name is updated here. And we could even select this, for example, and say, here's the part number itself. And we can see that the part number has been updated. And we can go through and do it with whatever we need. Here's our part revision. We can see it change from A to 003. So we're extracting this information and putting it right into the database. And I haven't touched the keyboard, right? I haven't typed anything in yet. We're just using the OCR and the technology to be able to do it more effectively and efficiently. So another option that we have that some of our customers find extremely beneficial is we have this whiteout function, to where if we click on it, what it does is it whites out all the dimensions that it did get, so we can easily see which ones it did not. We don't claim to be perfect. It's not going to pick up every dimension on every print, but this is a great way to be able to see what it did not get. And if we zoom in on this, and let's say this is a note that we want to have in the bill of characteristics and have it as a feature. We have a note option right over on the top left right here. And we can simply click on that, and then again, we're just going to box select. Now, as soon as we let off of here, the software automatically do what we call parses. So it parses this information, which basically is a fancy way to say it's reading it and figuring out what it says. And we can see right over here on the right that all of the wording has been properly extracted and put in the database. And when it's read up here, that means it's kind of the live thing, what we're talking about. So it entered it incorrectly, and now we can grab the other one if we so choose. And now we see the other one went away because the whiteout function is still on. And by the way, if you mouse over things, it will come back to life, so you can see them if you'd like to. So now that we have both of these selected, we have all of our information. We can off-check on the whiteout balloons, and now we have all of our information back. But we also notice that we're out of order because now we have 43 and 44, whereas we wanted to renumber them. So if we just go up here and click on renumber, everything is renumbered and put back in order. We do have some customers that want to put all the notes first. So let's say if I wanted to label this number 1 and number 2. Okay. Another option I can do is go in here into the bill of characteristics down at the bottom, and I'm just going to say lock those dimensions. Now, when I go to renumber the system, it'll say I have locked dimensions in the list, and they're not going to be renumbered. So those will stay at 1 and 2, but all of the rest of them are renumbered appropriately. We also had the functionality. I grew up in the automotive industry, so I was taught to go view by view and clockwise around the view. That's how we number. So we do have those options as well. We can renumber by views, and you can see right here where it says clockwise spiral. So we do allow for that functionality as well. But another option a lot of customers find beneficial is they'll get a metric print in, for example, and they want it to maybe go out on the shop floor, but it's in maybe the shop floor, quote unquote, speaks in inches. We do have this convert option right here where you can simply click on it, and it converts all of the dimensions on the print over to the other unit, from inch to metric or metric to inch, whichever you need. So very convenient, very easy to not have to get out the calculator and use the magic 25.4 number. Another option, again, we're going to focus mainly on PQP, but also want to try to paint the picture to tie things together. One of the elements that we use to tie things together is the full gauge management. So this has a gauge management built right. This has gauge management built right into it. All of the gauges in your facility would be listed here, and this has all of the calibration details for the gauge in question. Any certificate numbers that are appropriate, maintenance, location, any of this information is available right here. But why would you want to, oh, by the way, before I get to that, we do have notification settings available as well. You can have them, if it's expired, notify this person. If it's expiring pretty soon, you can say notify this person that it's going to be expiring soon. And that can be internal or external if you have maybe a third party that's helping you with calibrations. So we can do that. But one thing that we do that we don't believe anyone else does, we don't know of it, we haven't heard of it anywhere. If I just select this thread plug gauge, for example, something we have is called usage history. So if I click on that, I can see every dimension that this gauge ever checked, down to the lot number, serial number, part number, dimension number, the requirement itself, what it was. Even if we slide over to the side here, we can even identify who measured it, the date and the timestamp that it was measured, and even if it came from a specific machine or if it was tied to a non-conformance report. All of that information is captured and logged because with all the information in the database, both the planning phase, right, with the identification of the elements on the print, the engineering elements on the print, now we have the gauge information, and I'm going to show you in a couple minutes how we get the data. So now we have the actual information and nominal information and the gauge. We can start tying all that information together and making sense of it and making some actionable decisions in your facility. So just wanted to show that to you very quickly. But what we'd like to roll into is manufacturing operations, mainly because this is going to tie very, very significantly into the PQP aspect of it, okay? So when we get this part, we're obviously not going to make it in one simple operation. We're going to break it up, right? It's going to be, we're going to rough it here and finish it here and plate it there, and depending on what industry you are in, it could have many operations. It could have very few. If it's plastic injection molding, maybe you have a one shot and it's done. However, let's say, for example, we wanted to create all of these dimensions, or that all of these dimensions are affected in a specific operation. And maybe we're going to rough that operation, for example. Maybe we're going to rough this part in. We have the operation over here on the side. And whenever you see a pencil, you can put additional information in as well. And if we simply click that pencil, we can come in here and there's the op number. You can change that to be whatever you want. You can precede it with, operation or op or O or whatever you want. It's very configurable to match whatever system you have. Let's say, for example, this is a roughing operation, and you can even tie it to a specific work cell maybe, or if you know the exact machine that's going to machine this part in a roughing state, you can add that as well. You can click OK. And now you have a nice print that has a nice visual to see multiple operations, that those dimensions are affected by multiple operations. But more importantly, if we come down into the bill of characteristics, in the manufacturing operation, we now have a roughing op. And if we click on the print, now we have an in-process print. So if I could pause here for a second, one of the things we really talk a lot about is collaboration and increasing collaboration interdepartmentally, right, in your facility. So typically, this is on the manufacturing side. This will go down to the manufacturing engineer or the ME, and they will create the in-process sheets. They will create their own check sheets. They'll create the prints for unique operations. I was at a customer, and he's like, oh, yeah, I have to create a print for every operation for the people on the floor who are doing the work. You can do that right inside of the software and cross-collaborate, meaning maybe it's one department that does the ballooning, the other department that does the manufacturing operation to identify the different characteristics that are uniquely machined or altered by a specific operation. And so you could have your in-process check sheet here. But now, even though we have all this information in here, we're probably, if this is the roughing operation, we probably want to change some things about it. And what I'm going to do, I'm just selecting all of these, and this is the operation. So anything we're selecting is only going to affect those operational or those dimensions inside that operation, not the final dimension. For example, if it's a roughing operation, maybe I want to change the nominal value. Let's say I want to add or subtract, maybe they're IDs, and I want to subtract this value for everything. But you can add value, you can subtract it, you can go by percentage, really however you want that matches your requirement. Maybe you want a set tolerance of plus or minus 10 thou, and maybe you want to say, hey, measure this with a bore gauge. Obviously, I know that wouldn't work, but just for the sake of demonstration. Now, once I hit apply and close, all the information is now captured in the database. You see the requirement here and the nominal of 425. It has the original dimension of 445 with the 20 thousandths subtracted from it, and then the set tolerance of plus or minus 10,000. So it has all that information. Now I can even go up and create an inspection plan, or what we call an inspection plan, which some people call an in-process check sheet. So I can create an in-process check sheet using whatever template I want, and I hit Create Report. And once we create that report, it's actually going to capture all the information from the in-process check and put it right into an Excel sheet. And we can see right here that we have Operation 10 listed, all the print requirement numbers are here, and all the requirements and the values, value meaning the nominal, and those have been adjusted by that 20 thousandths. So this in-process check has already been in the database altered for this specific operation. And it's also identified that you want a bore gauge to be able to measure it. Now, if you wanted, all you would need to do is grab this actual information and pull it back into Inspection Manager, and it would populate the database with actual information as well. So that's one aspect. Now, keep in mind, this is a multi-step aspect, but meaning that you could create the operation, you're going to balloon the print, create the operation, and then create the in-process inspection sheet, then fill out the sheet, and then bring that sheet back in. You can certainly do that. Another thing we can do is we have a shop floor tool that can be used to gather this information automatically. For example, if I log in here, I can have this information for this part and enter this information directly into the database. So there's no multi-step process. Once you create the inspection plan inside of Inspection Manager and you say, I want to measure these features, for example, this, now keep in mind this is on the shop floor and designed for the shop floor, not necessarily for like finish or final or something that would come off a CMM, because we can automatically bring in information from an automated measurement system. But here's the requirement. You can change the view to make this look however you'd like to, and simple or kind of complicated. The requirements are off to the left here. And now you can simply grab this gauge. And I wanted to point this out because let's say this blade micrometer, and here's the blade micrometer, and I'm going to select that. Because you saw in the gauge list before that we should track usage data. So to kind of paint the picture, I logged in as a unique user, as Joe Inspector. So now that I'm logged into the system, it knows who is measuring this. Now I'm going to identify the gauge to where I'm going to measure this feature so I know exactly what gauge I'm using. And I know exactly what job I'm in. I know what lot I'm in. I know what sample number I'm in. I have all that information logged as well. So I can capture all of this information. And I can even, for the sake of time, I'll do this relatively quickly. Let's say I enter a bad number in. it'll automatically pop up with an out-of-tolerance notification to say, would you like to measure this again or adjust the value or keep it failed? And if we do say keep failed, it'll automatically pop up with a nonconformance record that we can simply fill out right here. And again, because we're database driven, we know most of this information is already here. Okay, I know the job number, who I'm logged in as, the date, the timestamp, the lot, the unique nonconformance number. And now I can define it to say, hey, this repair required, maybe there's a scratch. And we say okay, and then we have a defect code, and you can have whatever code you want in here. Maybe it's in the machining side. That's completely configurable to whatever you need it to be. And now that NCR is in the system right here, and it can be, we can set up notifications to where a certain person is notified that is a new NCR in the system. So we have that functionality as well. So I know that gets away from the PQP side of it, but when we start talking about data and pulling data in, it's important to know some of the tools that are available to you in the same software package, right? So let's get back, oops, sorry about that. Let's get back into the software. Now, let's flip the switch a little bit and get a little bit more in depth and involved in the PQP side. So what I'm going to do is open the same part, but it has PQP information in it already, so we can kind of walk through this. And we're going to kind of go step by step. Initially, to kind of paint the picture here a little bit again, we're going to kind of show you what the process would look like in the end game, if you will. Then we're going to back up and kind of show you some of the guts of the system and how we got there. So kind of bear with us for a few minutes as we kind of roll through this. So we're going to go back to manufacturing operations because, as I mentioned before, it's very, very important to understand the operations because, and this has multiple operations that have already been identified. And if we talk to about our, let's say our milling, for example, and we'll just click on this, and it brings up the operation for our milling, same exact window that you saw before. So, but the area that I'd really like to focus in on is this pull down right here called process. And the process, as if anyone's in quality here on this call, any QEs or QMs, you know that most of the documentation is built around a process, right? You define the process, and then you look for your failure modes of that process. You look to see if it's a process flow diagram, right? So what's the flow of the process? So everything is built around a process. So again, to kind of paint the picture, all we're doing is identifying the process here that we're using. And as I'll show in a few minutes, we've built some templates in the background that house all of the information for this process. And you'll hear us use the word template or templatize a fair amount here because most of it is templatized. And that's the important aspect of it. It's not a file that we're referencing. It's literally a template. So as we're going into the manufacturing operation, all we need to do is signify the process that we're using for that operation. Once we do that, we can come up to our PQP records right up here. And we have all of our information for that process, populates all of our PQP documentation. Okay? Let me show you what I mean by that. If I go into the process flow diagram, here's my process flow. Here's the milling and the finish and the turning. All of these are already in the system and part of the process. And of course, there's going to be more than is in the manufacturing operation, right? Because when the manufacturing operation is typically when we're affecting dimensions or dimensions that are on the print. Whereas in the regular process flow, we can have additional items as well, right? Like ordering material, where that could have dimensions that affect it. Typically, it doesn't. So we can add additional processes right here to this process flow without them being in the manufacturing operations. Let's look at another one. We'll go back to the index. Let's look at the Pfmea. That's always usually a pretty popular one. And if we look at the Pfmea, we can see here that once we scroll down, which we're looking at milling, I think it was, there's our milling operation. So here's the milling, the process name, all the failure modes that were assigned to that, the effects, all the severities and everything were automatically pulled in. So all of this information was actually pulled in from the template. And again, I'll show you that template in a few minutes. But once it's in here, and this is the important part, once it's in here, it's not part of the template anymore. It's part of this part record and associated with this unique part in this unique part record. So if you did need to change something, let's say hypothetically, this customer that you're doing this for doesn't think that this has an occurrence of 7. They think it's a 4. Okay, great. You can change this to a 4. Maybe it's not setup sheet here. Maybe it's something else. These are all configurable to be whatever you would like them to be, and even add more if you'd like them from a description standpoint. Now, I'd like to take just a quick second and break that down a little bit as to what that can mean in the future sense. And what I mean by that is this is the PQP side of it, right? We have the planning phase of it. We have the data side of it. We have the PQP side of it. But where is it going to go from here? And ultimately, it goes to supply chain. Because to have all of your information consistent here is very, very, let's call it a nicety if it's kept internally, right? So everyone's talking the same language. Everyone has the same nomenclature that they're using here. It's very good. It helps for consistency, but it's kind of a nicety. However, when you start passing this down to supply chain, imagine packaging this information up, sending it down, and they fill out the information. And now when they submit it back to you, one file comes back to you from your supplier, and it melds right into your existing database, and it has all of your information in it already with your terminology, your process controls, your everything, because, it came from you, right? So that's where the importance is from a consistency standpoint. And again, kind of painting the picture for future, but just wanted to take a second and kind of outline that a little bit. Okay, so one thing wanted to point out, all right, that's nice, it does that. However, what does it look like in reality? How would I add more? Well, let's do that, and we'll see. We can see what that looks like. So we're going to go back to manufacturing operations. And what I'm going to do is simply grab some dimensions here. And I'm going to say add operation, very similar to how I did it before that you saw. And now I have an op 60 and some features identified there. Now when I click the little pencil, I'm going to say, okay, maybe it's tied to a work cell, maybe it's tied to a specific machine, maybe it's outsourced, I don't really care. But maybe this is, we're shipping the parts, right? So let's ship the parts out. But now we're going to tie it to a process. So what process? Well, we do have a ship parts process in here. So we'll identify it to that process. And now we're going to hit OK. And so again, very similar to the other time we did this, we have multiple colors identifying that. And we have now a process ID of ship parts. Now, for those of you kind of digging into what I'm doing here, there's a method to the madness. So why would you have dimensions associated with shipping the part? I'm actually just trying to demonstrate that I'm going to show the Pfmea, but I'm also going to show the control plan. And as you well know, the control plan needs dimensions associated with it. So I did grab some dimensions there, and so we can have some data when we go look at the control plan in a couple minutes. So that's why I did that. So if we go into our PQP records, we're going to go back into the process flow. Now, I shouldn't say caveat, but one function of the system is that everything is tied to the process flow. So the process flow is the starting point for us to build all the processes around, okay? So all I'm going to do is come into the process flow, and I know I added something, right? So I'm just going to say sync processes. It says, oh, it's going to go look up the manufacturing operation and pull in anything that's different. And we can see in green right here that our ship parts has now been pulled in. And this is purposely not in a specific order, right? Because it could go anywhere. And again, I mentioned before that you can have multiple processes in here. So it's not going to naturally think, oh, it's ship parts, it should be at the end. But all we have to do is grab it, drag it down to wherever we want it to be. Again, it's just a matter of grabbing these ends here and moving them around. And now if it's where we want it to be, we just simply click Apply Changes and say yes here to our warning. Now that ship parts process is part of the process flow. Okay? And again, I'm going to show you where I got that information in a little bit. But if I go back to the index now, and I'm going to go into the process flow, the Pfmea. So if I look at the Pfmea, now I get a note here that says, wait a minute, the process flow has changed. You need to synchronize your processes. So, okay, we'll just click on Sync Processes. So now when we scroll down here, we can see that it's all in green here because this is new, it's been added. Ship parts has been added. Now all the failure modes and the effects that were in the template were pulled in here. And again, now they're part of this part record, and they're unique to this part record, so I could change them if I needed to. And let's face it, most of the times you don't need to, right? Because they're a template, they're based on a process you already have. So you really won't need to change them unless it's something customer-specific possible or part-specific. So this information was all pulled in as it should be. And this would mimic what? Going and finding a similar part in an Excel form and copying the rows and pasting them in and doing any changes and hope everything lines up. This does it by the click of a button. Because all we're going to do is hit Apply Changes, our warning again. And now, once we click Yes, now that ship parts, the green is gone, and that becomes part of the Pfmea. Okay? And let's go take a look at the control plan as well. If we look at the control plan, same message comes up. Source document has been changed. Please synchronize. So we're just going to say synchronize processes. Notice it says and dimensions as well, because they need to be tied to a dimension, right? And if we scroll down to the bottom, because that's where our ship parts was, here's the information for the ship parts that was added, all the dimensional information, all the dimension numbers themselves, how we're going to measure it, the sampling frequency, the sampling size. All that information has been put into the system and synchronized. Okay? So it's all right there. All that information is captured. Now, a couple things to talk about while we're here, and then I'm going to show you where those templates came from. And we're also going to talk about workflows and approval flows and all that good stuff. So quite a bit to go through. So we have document revision for this. So imagine, if you will, that there's a couple different aspects to workflows and approvals. Okay, you're going to have it within this part record, right? If I submit it for this unique part, it's going to go through a certain process for approval. But additionally, the form itself has a certain level of control that it needs to maintain, right? Revision control. Everything that's done in here is tracked by some form of revision control. Okay, for example, if I click on revisions, I can see that this is revision 1.01. Now, this is a document revision. This isn't kind of what's been done to it. If I look at the history, for example, I see everything that's been done to this form in this part record. Okay, this is in the part record. So a good change or difference right there of those two aspects of the software. If I click on workflow, and I'll show you where these are defined in a little bit, we can see that we have workflows set up for this. If we start here, it goes to here, and it completes here. So we have that full transparency of who it is, and here are the owners up here, right? Here's the inspector, manager, procurement manager, any type of approval process that would be needed would be identified right here. And again, we have history for that. We can click on that, shows that there isn't any history. But okay, we have that information. Now I want to show you kind of where it goes from, or excuse me, where it came from. So if we go up to manufacturing, one thing I'd like to point out is this, the two areas that we'll look at right now are the process library and the Fema or Fmea templates. So if we click on process library, it's just what it sounds like, right? We kept talking about processes and how information is built around a process. Well, this is the library that houses all of the processes. So if we scroll down here, and here's our milling operation, for example. So if we just click on that, we have a fabrication setting that's built right here, right? The different process type. So all you're doing is building what each one is, okay? And we can even look at the template Fema and say, okay, let's shrink this down so we can see it a little bit better. The process characteristic, the failure modes, what are they? This is the template. So you could tell it looks the same, right? This is the template information that when you select the milling process, it's going to pull this information into the Pfmea for the part record, okay? And this can be changed at this level here. You can add in here whatever you need to. And but when you're doing it in this level, you're changing the actual template. So now any future ones that you would pull, any future parts where you pull this milling operation, you would be pulling this new information from it, okay? Hope that makes sense. Additionally to that, we can look at the Fmea templates. And this is kind of a compiling of all of the templates together. So here's, for example, casting and drilling, ordering material, finish, receiving material. All of the Fmea templates are in here. Now, this is an important point to make at this stage, because a lot of our customers go, oh my gosh, I got to put all that information in here, and the answer is no. So we give you predefined templates that's going to cover most everything for you. Okay. The feedback that we've gotten from the customers who've implemented this is that it gets you about 85% of the way there. That last 15% is a little bit configured by the individual customer, our individual customer, and but it allows that flexibility and configurability to be able to start with a good template, but then also, I don't want to say customize because that makes it sound like a bad word, but configure it to anything that's specific to you. But in addition to that, also wanted to point out, right, this is an Fmea template. Notice this little button right here says import. And what can I import from Excel? So you can have your Fmea templates and from in Excel and be able to import them in here as well, and then be able to, change, modify, configure them however you need to. Okay? So that's one aspect of it. Now, another one is, one thing I wanted to bring up, is what we call component templates, and that's in our settings side. So if we look at component templates, this is where we go to our indexes or indices. Now, the question we get a ton, actually, it may be easier to show you. Well, no, I'll show you right here. So if we look at this one, for example, and by the way, I renamed these fictitious names just so you can get an idea that they're different. Because one thing we get a lot of questions of is that, well, hey, can I set up different submission packages? Because I'm medical and I have FDA level 1, 2, and 3. Or I'm automotive and I have levels, Ford level 1, GM level 3, and Honda level 5, and you have different levels of that. You can set up as many indices as you need. For example, if I had a AS9145 submission package, maybe I need all of these records as part of that submission package. But if I just have maybe a 360 general, I only need this. Maybe this is a level 1. You can set it up to where, okay, I'm only going to select these now for my submission. For example, if you have an FDA level 3, maybe you need these records. And again, I know these aren't correct. I just wanted to kind of demonstrate the different levels you can put here. And you can even tie that into, oops, wrong button there. You can change it. Now, I just wanted to show you very quick. If we go back into our PQP, same spot we were before, and this is the same exact screen we were looking at before, we could come up here and say change index. And we can change this index level to where only certain elements are shown, right? And again, you can change it as part of it, as on the fly, if you will. You pick the wrong one, it's fine. Pick the right one. You can have these for different levels of customer, again, different levels of PPAP submission. However you want, highly, highly configurable. But I do want to get back to here for just a minute on the component templates, because I wanted to point out one more aspect before we get into permissions, and then we're running what should have about a good 5 minutes left for questions and answers. So if we look at the system components again, a couple of things I'd want to point out are workflows. So on the workflow system, just like we talked about a little bit on the document level, we have configurable workflows. Now, workflows are actually pretty significant. What I mean by that is the workflows are part of the PQP application that works within the software. Okay. However, you can assign workflows to more than just the documentation itself, right? You can assign it to just about anything inside the software that you need some type of workflow to be based on. So it's kind of a bigger aspect than just simply pointing it to the PQP side. So if we have approval document workflow, for example, okay, this is how it starts, draft, review, complete. Who does this? What happens when it approves? What happens when it rejects? If there's a signature, for example, okay, this is how it looks, for example, and you can see that we now have a sign category in here as well. So it needs to go somewhere and then get signed, and then if it doesn't, who does it go back to? So all of these workflows are defined. And and that's the standard. So that's like if you modified a document, right? I'm going to modify a part submission warrant. I'm going to have a part submission warrant for every customer I have. Okay, you're going to send each one of those individually through an approval flow, right? And that's the approval flow. But when we're talking about PQP, we can actually go outside the system as well. For example, if I look at the preview on this can actually start here, get drafted, review, and sign, and then you send it to a customer or supplier for their review as well, and they can approve or reject it, right? And if it rejects, it goes back, maybe it needs modification, and then if it's complete, once it's complete, it's complete. So you can set these up for internal and external applications as well. And there's a customer, maybe just, again, you set it up however you need to that matches the configuration you need. And the last thing I'd like to bring up, last point I'd like to bring up is we keep talking about all of these, okay, approval, reject, workflows, who's doing it. Also note that in the system, we do have user accounts. We have full accessibility configurability, right? For example, if I click on myself in the system, I'm set up as the administrator. We have user roles within everything to where you identify, and if you've noticed, we've identified the title, if you will, of the person or the user access of the person that would be signing it, approving it, what have you. However, we also need to set up each individual person by their login with the correct role in order to do that. For example, if Sally is set up for the quality manager, okay, great. Anything assigned to the quality manager will now go to Sally, and so on and so forth. So we do have full user control, and here's my Joe Inspector user that I have, and we only have him set up as the general inspector, and then accessing the IME IMX, which is the shop floor data acquisition that you saw a little bit ago. So that is just want to let you know we have full accessibility and rights login and full IT control, basically. So that wraps up pretty much everything we wanted to cover. So if we could roll into questions and answers now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim. That was a great presentation. Let's see here. We do have a number of questions from the audience, and we'll begin addressing them now. And should we have to wrap up things before our speakers can respond to all the questions, any unanswered questions will be answered by email. And just a reminder that I am Bruce Morey from Fmea, Senior Technical Editor for Manufacturing and Engineering Magazine. So let's hear. We will be able to stretch it a bit beyond the hour if need be, and I think we are going to today. If you can't, you can revisit this webinar anytime you wish after 4 p.m. today, Eastern today. So on to our first question. And a note to our listeners, if you have not asked a question, please ask a question. Use the Q&A box. Our visitors from IQA really want to answer these questions. So let's go on to the first one. Let me just adjust something here real quick. So, Tim, is there a way to have standard Fmea, CP with set characteristics already populated in each operation? So basically a boilerplate plan that could be customized for a specific part.
So we can have, if I understand the question correctly, you want to have PQP documents per.
Yeah, I might have bobbled the question a little bit. Let me try again because there's a lot of letters and stuff. Yeah, is there a way to have a standard Fmea CP with set characteristics? I think that's what they're asking for. Those are three separate things.
Fmea for the characteristics. Oh, something you could do inside the system.
Okay. I see you're showing something on the screen.
Yeah. Sorry, I was popping over to the screen very quickly. So in the manufacturing app, so we could do a few different things based on that. That question. The short answer is yes. The short answer is yes. But we can identify certain characteristics with characteristic designators over on the side as well. And then we can include that in the manufacturing operation, assign the process, and then that process is linked to the Pfmea, right? So it's all about the process. Once we click it into the manufacturing operation, assign the dimension to the process houses the templatized information for the Pfmea. I hope that answers your question okay.
Yeah,
Tim, if I could jump in.
Sure.
You guys able to hear me? Yeah. Hey, this is Chris. I'm Chris Mendocino, the VP of Product at IQA. So I was listening in to be able to answer some of the questions. I actually flagged that one because I thought it was representative of some common questions that we actually get when we're introducing this module to companies. Because what I think the viewer was getting at when they were asking the question is, oftentimes the way customers will set up FMEAs and control plans and P flows is by setting up kind of these boilerplate templates, because building FMEAs is so complex, or not complex, but time consuming in the traditional method, just using Excel. And so you have these templates of common operation steps or common inspection procedures and such. And so because the way our system works, it kind of nullifies some of that in a way where we're actually extracting all of the content for the FMEAs and the PFLOws from the way that you set up the raw inspection requirements. So there's no need for redundant data entry or any of that. So it's a bit of a different way of thinking about building FMEAs, which once customers start wrapping their heads around this, we've noticed there's a significant mentality shift in how they prep for their manufacturing and inspections.
Okay. I think that answers it. Anything else, Tim, before we move on to the next question?
No, that's great. That's Chris is the development of product. He knows more about this than anyone else in the company, so he's the perfect person to answer that.
Fantastic. And again, if you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. If we don't get to them during this presentation, they will be answered by email. So I think we got time for maybe two more questions. And the next one is, do you follow new AIAG DDA Fmea standard? So there's a new standard out there. Are you following that new standard?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one too, because I flagged that one as well. So yeah, that was another really good question that came up. Again, it's an extremely representative question that we get quite a bit. So the system that we built was not tailored to one standard or any particular standards. While we have templates and such for some common reports or common indexes for various standards that we've seen throughout the industry, and we're continuing to build on those for what we have out of the box. The system is really built to be highly configurable to any kind of requirements that companies have. And the reason for that is because while a company might say, okay, well, we're AS 9145, or we're following AIAG standards, or we're ISO 1345, or whatever they are, right? Whatever a company's following, they always have some sort of way of fine-tuning it or adjusting it to their specific business practices. So we've seen tons of companies that all follow the same standard, but they don't all do everything exactly the same way. And so because of that, we needed a highly configurable system to meet any of those standards. So that is part of the implementation process, where we're able to map out all of the templates and components that you'll need in the system to meet your business logic.
Okay. Well, we have run out of time. A note to our viewers: any questions that have gone unanswered will be answered by email in the next couple of days by HiQA. There's also questions out there. Can you get a demo or a presentation of this recording? Yes. Remember, you can revisit this webinar anytime you wish after 4 p.m. And again, any unanswered questions will be answered via email by Tim and his team. I want to thank Tim and HiQA again for that great presentation. And if you want more information, please send an email to Tim at timh@hiqa.com or call 888-727-1266. As always, SME and SME Media can help you keep abreast of developments in automation, robotics, and smart manufacturing on our website, www.sme.org/latest-news. Thanks for joining us for this SME Media webinar. We hope you found it informative.